Welcome everyone to episode 28 of Ty's Training Talking with My Dad. This is the week of July 21st, 2025. I'm Ty, and here as always with my co-host and wonderful father, Tim Andrews, aka Mr. C, for another look at training and life ahead of Project Himalaya. Yes, we had the big announcement last week. It is official. We are going back to Everest in kind of an alarmingly short amount of time at this point. I think it's less than a month that I leave keto, which seems kind of insane. But yeah, things are progressing really well, happening quickly. Mr. C, how's it going over there?
Going great, although the heat index today is over 100 here, so it is an indoor
Oh,
day
sure.
for most of us, but at least it's sunny and warm, so generally going great.
I feel like that's the story of the like New England attitude is like there's like 1 week where everything is pleasant between complaining about it being really cold and complaining about it being really
Yep,
hot and
yep,
humid.
yep. Springtime is an afternoon in May. Yep.
Yeah, that sounds about right. All right. Well, I'll give you the numbers and then let's dive into it. This is a pretty big
Okay.
week. We had 128 kilometers. So what is that? Maybe 80 miles of horizontal time. And then 17,400 meters of vert. So I think that's 57,000 feet or something. I did the math. And over
Couple of
39
Mount
hours of training
Everest.
time. Yeah. So yeah, it was a big week for sure. Yeah, is that almost to Mount Everest? Oh, I should have gone done another 500 meters. I missed that. No, it was a really big week, good week, and yeah, things are really starting to click here, and I'm excited to talk through it all.
Only a super geek would know it was 500 meters off.
Well, it's like basically 9,000 meters, so 18,000 meters
It's
would be
okay.
two Everests
Yep.
next week.
Close enough. Close enough. Okay, so let's get started. So you had a good week. It certainly sounded like from reading through your notes and showed a clear progression in your fitness. So you started Monday a little sore from your Sunday workout, but managed a good Ruku summit. And then Tuesday, uh, what sounded like a breakthrough when you did a 143 time, even though you were doing fartleks, which I still love to say. Um, 1-1 fartlek. So tell us about that session on Tuesday in particular and how where you see your fitness and confidence right now.
We've talked a lot about this idea that, you can get confidence and fitness from different places. I think that for me, the most important are the days where I'm actually pushing hard. But I think almost just as important as those are the days where you're either just going easy or you're going kind of medium, moderate. And that's for me been a really nice benchmark as well. And this is one of those where it really wasn't a hard day. It was kind of a medium day. And to be able to go up there and run 143 to the summit from the road, which for me, like that was the FKT that I ran a year ago. So right before I went to Manaslu and set the record there. So that was like an all out effort, 12 months ago. And today to be able to go, or not today, but last week, to be able to go and do that on a pretty, maybe 70% kind of day, to me, that's really, really good to see, because it's one thing to go, okay, I went all out and then I did this time and it's the fastest time I've ever done. This isn't the fastest time I've ever done, but in the same way, to know that it was really controlled, the effort was good, and I was as fast as I was going all out a year ago. That to me is the kind of big macro progression that I really like to see, from year to year or season to season. And I know we talked a lot about the danger of comparison and how you don't want to totally only hold yourself to those standards of comparing yourself to past seasons, but still, like when things are going well, it's nice to it's nice to have. And now I think I've kind of turned the corner on some of the issues we were having in June, and I'm feeling a lot better. And suddenly, yeah, it's like, okay, it's kind of nice to compare now.
Yep. So now it's okay to make the comparisons you were telling yourself not to make.
Well, I think as long as it's not the only thing. And, I actually just listened to our episode from last week before this. And one of the things that I said is, I want to try to compare myself to this, like within this buildup, right? So is this
Uh,
buildup trending in the right direction? So instead of just looking at where was I in January, February, and March, because that we've talked about, it was such a good buildup. I don't necessarily want to hold that as the only benchmark, but I'm looking at, okay, where was I 2 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, now that I've been here training for a while. And that's where I really see the big upward trend right now is okay, this is, I think my first time up to recruit took over 2 hours, even going, kind of at a decent clip. And so now to be able to see that, okay, that's come down, whatever that is, almost 20 minutes, is pretty significant. So
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff that I think is the most helpful comparison is this actual season, is where was I in even early July? Now we're recording this at the end of July. Can I see progress in that month? And is the average of everything looking good? Because I don't ever trust one single day or one single data point. It's always, okay, what does the trend line look like if I look at, say, the 7-day moving average of kind of quality of workouts? And that's where I look to for the actual trend of the season. And right now, yeah, it's really positive.
Great. Yeah. Okay. So I noticed you really started to consistently add extra weight, and you're also doing a lot of Stairmaster work with that extra weight. So you did something like over 400 meters with a 10-kilogram pack on Tuesday, and this was after you're running already. So what specific benefits are you after, and what do you think you're getting from this stair climbing with the weight in your pack on you?
Well, I should caveat that, first of all, the Sherpa who are working on Everest are carrying like 20 to 30 kilos. 10 kilos to me is a lot, but those guys are insanely strong. And yeah, I'm looking to pick up a little bit of that. I think one of the things I've kind of debriefed myself after the spring season was I really just felt like I lacked a little bit of physical strength, of literal lifting power. And this is one of the ways that I want to do that, is just more, even just small doses of uphill training with a heavier pack on. 10 kilograms, I think, for me is probably heavier than I'm going to have to carry on Everest, I hope. But, if you're carrying 10 kilos in training, maybe the 6 or 8 kilos that are in your pack are going to feel a lot more manageable than if you're only carrying 1 or 2 kilos in training. Suddenly that's quite a bit more than you're used to. So it's not something I'm doing every day. It's kind of in conjunction with my heavier strength training days. And I think of it as strength training, because that's what it is. I'm literally trying to build more muscle in my quads and hip flexors and glutes and all these big lifting muscles that you have in your legs. And the idea is, yeah, literally just to be able to carry more stuff. And this all goes back to the really big takeaway from the spring, which was Everest is a really complicated project, and the more that we can be self-sufficient, the fewer moving pieces we can have, the better that's going to go. The caveat to that is, okay, that just means you're going to need to carry more stuff. This isn't a marathon where you're running in shorts and a singlet and then you pick up a water bottle for 30 seconds and then toss it. You really have to be pretty self-sufficient up there. And it's it's a harsh environment. You need a lot of gear and a lot of food and a lot of water, and that stuff adds up pretty quickly. So that's the idea. And yeah, we could talk about it more in relation to Sunday's workout as well. But the idea is to hopefully train with a little bit more than I'll actually need, not doing it all the time, but just enough that my body kind of gets a little bit used to that, puts on a little bit of muscle maybe, and I'm ready to go when the time comes in, late September, early October.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense because I think particularly the last summit attempt you made in the spring, that was part of the challenge was you were carrying a lot of stuff and
Yep.
probably hadn't trained enough for it. So, okay, good. So Wednesday you took it easy before Thursday's big day, but you still got up Ruku Summit in a similar time. So how do you balance this maintaining momentum while giving yourself proper recovery time?
Sometimes it kind of takes care of itself, honestly, because I think I'm just pretty tired after harder days. And so the idea of going out and going really hard up the mountain is just not going to happen. So a lot of it is listening to the body. And we've talked about perceived exertion and using that as kind of a guideline more than anything else. I do definitely use heart rate as well when I'm out there for a long time. But honestly, a lot of the time it's almost the opposite. It's, I'm having to push a little bit harder to get my heart rate up high enough if I'm really, really muscularly fatigued after, say, one of these double workout days or something like that. So I think honestly, the polarization, like I said, it kind of takes care of itself. Like if you're going really hard on the days that to me, I think are the days that matter, which are the days you're doing intervals, the days you're doing strength training, when you're really pushing yourself into that zone that is uncomfortable, the next day your body is not going to want to go fast. At least that's my experience. Maybe I'm just getting older, and I'm not like a college cross country runner anymore where you're like going out and pushing every single day. But I think that polarization kind of happens naturally, and that's, it's part of the process of getting fit is having those hard days and then bouncing back and having really easy and slow days sometimes. I shouldn't even say easy because they feel bad sometimes, but like they're definitely slow. So I think that that's kind of how I look at it is okay, the real hard work is done, and then the next day it's, you know, you're out there eating your broccoli, so to speak. You're doing the stuff that's it's going to help, it's going to make you fitter, but it's maybe a little bit less fun and flashy than the big workout days.
Okay, that makes sense. And so Thursday after that was a big day with you did some intervals up Polaczowski in the morning, and then your longest CV session of the build up, where you did 24 intervals in the afternoon. So
Yep.
talk us through Thursday and how that all went.
It was a really hard day. And going back to what I was just saying, I remember the next day, I can't, yeah, Friday we're talking about next, but
Friday.
Friday was so slow. I was so beat after Thursday. But it was okay. I knew that going to bed on Thursday, and I was like, okay, I'm going to feel this tomorrow morning. Yeah. I mean, it was a pretty typical, kind of double T day. I had in the morning, I think it was 10 by 6 minutes or something on Polichowski, and that went super, super well. This was like, again, going back to benchmarks, like it was way ahead of where I was. Certainly this buildup, and actually this was one that was better than the winter spring buildup and significantly ahead of last year. So that all those signals are really good, and it felt pretty controlled. It wasn't, an all out effort or anything, but it was a hard workout. And then yeah, the afternoon was nice because I feel like I've had a little bit of trouble this buildup just kind of dialing in the pace and effort for the critical velocity, which is like a little bit quicker than lactate threshold. And I've had a handful of workouts where I've just cut them short because the heart rate has gotten too high and the effort has gotten out of control, and I just didn't want to get myself into like a really deep hole. And I think this might be like the first one that actually I did the entire workout as I had written it on paper before I went in. Every other single time I was cutting something or I was changing the pace a little bit or whatever. But this is the first one where I was like, okay, I think I can do 24 times 1 minute. I'm going to shoot for this pace as the average. And it was like exactly on point. And to me, that tells me that I'm really in touch with my fitness right now. And, the early seasons, sometimes you're struggling with that a little bit of figuring out exactly where you are. And so not only was the absolute level very good, but I think even more promising was this idea that I it's the expectations versus reality thing, right? I knew what to expect, and then the reality matched that really, really well. So that was a really good day. And then yeah, we had like a long strength training session afterwards. And I've like started to become a gym rat. I think it's from hanging around with Brian Hall a little bit too much. Like I just enjoy hanging out there, and like I know a lot of the people because I've been working out at this gym for like 2 years now who work there, and like other clients and stuff. And I'll just like put on an audiobook or something, and all of a sudden it's like 2.5 hours have passed, and I'm like just finishing. I'm like, oh gosh, I need to go home. So yeah, that was one of those really long days where I'm basically just exercising from like 6 o'clock in the morning until dinner time. But it was a good one. Yeah, that was a nice day.
Great. And as you mentioned, and we were talking about earlier, you really felt it on Friday. So Friday, you were pretty much wiped out, described yourself as being very, very tired. You had to stop in the mid horses and eat a bar. So,
Yeah.
so it was a tough day, it sounds like. How do you tell the difference between when fatigue is productive and you should push versus when it's a warning sign and you need to back off?
This is one of those days where I mentioned earlier the idea of try like my heart rate was actually too low. Like I was too tired to push beyond like even the bottom of zone one. Like that was why I stopped and ate a bar halfway up the horse's climb, because it was like my heart rate was like 95 walking uphill. And it was like I was just so exhausted. I think those really, really long days, like Thursday, it's actually hard to fuel enough during those days because you're just exercising so much that you're in a big caloric deficit. And even with the feeling that we've talked about where I'm practicing taking in quite a bit of carbohydrate on that run, it's you're still only taking in like 400 calories in an hour, which is not actually that much. That's like two candy bars or something. So I think that was honestly a big part of Friday. It was just I didn't get enough. I literally didn't have enough time in the day where I could be like eating real meals to have enough calories to then get through the next day of training. And yeah, when I have those the days where the heart rate is just super low and I just feel like I can't push it any higher, to me it's usually a sign of either muscular fatigue or underfueling, and this is probably both of those, where you have there's just a huge muscular load or stress load from the day before because you had two sets of hard intervals. You had a heavy lift, had weight training with the Stairmaster, bike at the end. Like it's just a lot of exercise, a lot of muscular fatigue. And then also, okay, if you then also don't have enough fuel to even just get yourself through the next morning, that's where it starts to just become not productive. Like you said, it's not about, oh, I just need to get through this. It's like, okay, my heart rate is 95. This is like me walking up the stairs to my apartment. Like this is not helpful. So that was one where I like tried to eat something and all I had was a protein bar, which doesn't have much in it. And eventually I turned around early and was okay, I'll add something in the afternoon because it's not productive to be out here right now. And yeah, I did that and then I came home and like ate all day and then I felt a lot better in the afternoon and I did another 20 or 30 minutes on the treadmill to kind of wrap it up and that felt great. So I think it's just being able to adapt and recognize those signals of, like you said, when is it just normal fatigue and I'm tired versus when is it actually not productive or even counterproductive.
Hmm. Okay. So you're so really, if I understand, your caloric deficit was so great from Thursday, you just couldn't make up enough of it, um, and so trying to get out there early Friday, you just didn't have enough, and you were, of course, very fatigued in general from the big workout on
Yeah.
Thursday, so it was a double whammy. Hmm.
Yeah,
That
and
makes sense.
for these easy days, I almost never eat anything before these early just normal training days, like not the hard workouts, but the recovery days. So, I wouldn't have had anything since whatever Thursday evening, which is normal for me. I do that all the time and usually it's fine. But if you're under fueled, then suddenly, okay, you burn through all that muscle glycogen really quick. If you're already in a little bit of a deficit, maybe you feel
Yep.
okay for 30 or 60 minutes, which was kind of my experience. But then that, someone hands you a piano to carry for the rest of it, and all of a sudden it feels pretty bad.
Okay, we'll keep that metaphor in mind, carrying a piano up the hill. Okay, so then there was a big contrast because you woke up Friday feeling, you said, approximately a million times better. So it was quite dramatic. So
Yeah.
we've sort of talked about it, but obviously that does teach you something about the importance of fueling and recovery timing, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. David Wilder, who's one of my oldest friends from high school, and he also ran cross country in college. We competed against each other, and I remember he was telling we were. I think it was when we had our big gathering in June, when I was back in Massachusetts, and we were talking about like fueling and running and stuff, and he was like, "Yeah, when I was in college, like we were training so much, and I was whatever 20 years old, and I would literally go to the dining hall every at night after practice, and I would just eat until it hurt." I was like that's kind of how I feel right now is like that's the amount of focus you have to put into getting enough calories to get through the training. And
Yeah,
it's a lot of hours. It was almost 40 hours of training last week and that's a lot. And I do, I try not to eat like complete garbage. And that is an easy way to get a lot of calories, but I think it's maybe not the best. So, it's hard to get 4 or 5 thousand calories when you're eating like brown rice and vegetables and like chicken breast. You gotta like sometimes get a little bit creative. I go through a lot of peanut butter, bread, things like that. But yeah, it can be tricky. I don't like going to bed like in pain, but it is almost like a whole other leg of the stool is the day-to-day fueling, not even the fueling on the runs, but just the fueling to support the training load.
yep.
And it's something that this buildup I've been working with.
Yeah, it's always been amazing to me how much you've eaten since you started really training this much and how it's an important effort, as you say. It takes a lot of focus because you just have to make sure you've got enough calories in you, given how much you're
Yep.
burning. Yep.
Yep.
Hmm. Okay. So you've been doing bike sessions at very high altitudes, 8,200 meters and up. And you mentioned that your heart rate has been dropping after about 40 minutes pretty consistently. So just curious if you have any thoughts on what's going on there yet.
This is a really interesting one, and I asked good old Dr. Claude about this, and there were a handful of hypotheses. I wouldn't say there was one really obvious thing because normally what you experience, especially like a bike trainer is a very, very controlled environment. So you can have a fixed power output the entire time, which is usually what I'm doing. Usually what you see is a very gentle upward trend, if not, kind of initial upward and then plateau. That's pretty much what you'd expect. And I'm doing this out in the bright sun in the middle of the day, in layers. So you would actually expect that curve to go up continuously, really, because of the thermal stress that your body is trying to keep itself cool. What I'm experiencing is the opposite. Like I said, it kind of goes up and then it usually kind of plateaus, and then after some amount of time it's like a step change and it just kind of goes down like 5 or 10 beats, and I'm not doing anything different. I don't know what that is. ChatGPT or Claude, excuse me, was saying, it could potentially be related to metabolism and, the metabolism of fat and how that's coming into play, especially because, again, this is all part of this morning training, which is usually fasted. It could be that once your body like reaches a certain amount of homeostasis with the heat, and suddenly the thermal load actually drops a little bit because it's like, okay, we're actually fine. This is not a big deal. But yeah, it's a curious one. If anyone out there is like a physiologist or has ever experienced this before, I'd be curious to hear about it. Because I don't have a great answer for that, but it's something I've seen not every single time, but probably at least 50% of the time. I see that little drop somewhere in the 30 to 40 minute range, and then it just kind of stays there at that lower rate. And then so sometimes I'll actually have to like increase the wattage to get back into the correct heart rate zone. So it's pretty interesting. I don't know. This is all the
Yeah.
like sports
Yeah.
science
That's
stuff is very
over
hand
my pay
wavy
grade.
sometimes.
That's
Yeah.
definitely an odd phenomenon. Yep. Okay. But better, I think, going down 40 beats than up 40 beats, so I can't really say
Not
much
40.
either way.
We're talking like five or
5 or
10
10.
beats.
Sorry,
Not,
after
yeah,
40
yeah.
minutes. I was getting those
After
confused,
40.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep. Okay. So then on Sunday, you did the epic 7-hour hypoxic session, and
Yep.
had the classic, yeah, moment when you got to the gym and, oh
Of me
crap, the
being
gym
an
is
idiot and
closed.
having ADD and not reading the directions carefully. Is that what you want to say?
Yeah, it's never happened to me, I know. Um, so how did you handle that? And does that give you any insight into your general mental state going into these bigger sessions?
I think I actually wrote a little note, like, because I take notes as I'm doing this workout because it's mostly on the Stairmaster or treadmill, so I can do that just on my phone. And I think I wrote something like, this is kind of a clusterfuck, but the fact that I'm just kind of laughing at myself instead of getting really annoyed is probably a good sign about where my headspace is. And I
Yep,
think that's true. It's yeah, this is me like literally not reading the directions, and I got to my gym at 6 o'clock, and it was Sunday, and so they didn't open till 8, and I'd like done all this prep, and I was like, oh no, and whatever. But it was more just like, okay, this is fine, and actually, I have the systems in place where I can recover and make this work, and it's fine, it's not a big deal. And I think that ability to laugh at myself and pivot really quickly and just be like, okay, this is cool, it's funny, whatever, is going to make a good story, and I can still get a great workout in. That to me shows that I think I'm just feeling a little bit less stressed about the training side right now because things are going well. I remember we talked a lot about in the spring this idea of like the fitter you are, the more room there is for error, and I think this
yep,
is one of those situations where if this were 4 weeks ago, like in June or something, when everything had kind of been going not super well, I think I'd be like, oh no, like everything has to go perfectly. And now I'm in a state where I'm like, okay, if it's not exactly how I diagrammed it on the chalkboard, that's okay. There's going to be a little bit more break time, whatever, it's fine, and so I think that just shows a general reflection of my state of mind in this block, which I think is a good thing. Yeah.
yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, your confidence level is just much higher, so it's
Right.
easier. It's easier to be resilient in the face of some adversity, even if it's self-inflicted adversity, as it was in
Yeah.
this case.
Exactly. Yep.
hmm Okay. And that 7-hour session was quite something. You've done a couple of these now, and they're just blow
Yeah.
my mind sessions. So you started at 7,200 meters with your gas mask simulated meters and went up to 9,100 simulated meters with a
Yep.
12-kilogram pack on your back. I remember you telling me, in fact, about the people in when you were in Nepal who couldn't do this for a minute. Like after a minute,
That
you
was
were
at
having to like lift.
11,000. That was 11,000 meters for what it's worth.
Okay, well,
But still,
but
it's a
anyway,
lot.
Yeah, it's an amazing statement of fitness in general to do this, and especially to do with a 12 kg backpack on. So can you tell us about how you design these sessions? What's the strategy, and how did it go?
This one went really well. I did one session like this in the spring, um, and I thought it was a really interesting stimulus. I thought I learned a lot. I got a lot of confidence from it. I was able to practice a lot of things in a very controlled environment. And so I wanted to do a couple of this build up. I did one, I think it was 2 or 3 weeks ago, that was 6 hours, and then I did one this week, and then I'll do one more right before I leave keto. And the idea is to make them a little bit longer each time, and also just the distribution of altitude a little bit higher. So, we're kind of trying to mock up, what it's like to go up Everest, right? And so we're starting with lower altitude, it gets harder and harder, and it gets higher and higher. And so you're kind of adjusting the pace down, you're getting slower, practicing patience, just kind of noting how each of those transitions feel. It's also a good opportunity to practice eating a lot, which we've talked about, really slamming the calories for those 7 hours. And yeah, this one, I'd say the majority of it, I think like the middle, like 5 hours was all at about 8,200 meters. And that's kind of where I've been on the bike. So that's where I felt comfortable with in terms of acclimatization. And next time it'll be, a little bit higher, probably more time up closer to summit altitude at 9,000-ish. And then yeah, the heavy backpack is well, again, it's heavy for me. It's not that heavy for some people, but it's a heavy enough that it's definitely, it, I feel like this workout is checking a lot of boxes in terms of different things. You've got your altitude stimulus, you've got your fueling practice, you've got just something that is very long and monotonous, which I think is important to practice because that's basically what Everest is. It's a really long walk uphill for the most part, and a lot of it is in the dark. You don't even really have a view. You're just kind of living in your little circle of your headlamp. And then yeah, it's also a strength training workout because you've got that the weighted backpack on. It kind of does a whole bunch of things. It's a really hard day. It's a really long day, but for me, I think it checks a lot of boxes. And yeah, I'll do hopefully one more of those before we leave. Looking forward to that one. It'll be fun. But yeah, it's a good session.
Okay. And I can't remember if it was then or during that, but a couple of times, and this happened, I think, even before you went to the Himalayas the last time, you discovered that controlled breathing and breathing patterns could change your heart rate by as much as 5 to 10 beats per minute,
Yep.
which is, we talked about before. It could be quite significant because
Yep.
5 to 10 beats per minute is a lot over many,
It is a
many
lot.
hours that it takes to climb Everest. So it seems significant. How significant do you feel it is for your Everest preparation?
I think it's really significant. I know exactly. It's got to the point where I can almost tell what my heart rate is like within a couple of beats without even looking at my watch or a monitor or anything, just because my perceived exertion is really dialed into my heart rate. And it's also a way that I can tell if something is wrong because if my heart rate is way higher than I feel like it should be, then that's usually a sign that I'm getting sick or something like that. So yeah, for me, I mean, the difference between 135 and 125, which is kind of the range that we're talking about here, is really significant because 135 is for me right at the top end of zone two. And 125 is right in that sweet spot middle range, even towards the lower end. So, if I can just breathe a little bit differently and focus on that, this is an inner game thing. It's really paying attention to the breath. It's not even really trying to do anything differently. It's just, okay, like it's almost a meditation thing, just listening to the breath and literally feeling the movement of your chest and how deep is your breath going and all these things, slowing it down a little bit, usually taking some deeper breaths. For me, I find like clockwork that was lowering my heart rate 5 or 10 BPM. And yeah, if I can be climbing up in the 120s instead of the 130s, that's really significant for me. So I think it's something. The interesting thing that I want to see is, I'm hopefully going to Cotopaxi this coming weekend, and if it works like in real life versus with the simulated altitude, I think that'll be the kind of the really interesting thing because on Everest in the spring, I think I don't remember really putting it into practice, and that could just be that there's I felt like there were too many things going on. It was hard to focus on that. And maybe that's like actually a reminder of how important it is. Like that actually it's even more important. So, but yeah, it'll be interesting to go out into the mountains and really focus on that and say, oh, can I get that same effect of, okay, I'm walking up the hill and it's 135 and, a minute after, starting this kind of more focus on breath, it just drops down 5 or 10 BPM. That would be really, really interesting to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so now let's talk about fuel because you've been doing this much higher fueling rate kind of thing. So you were doing 420 calories an hour, which I think is much higher than you were doing
Yeah.
several months ago.
Yep.
And that seemed to work pretty well according to your notes over this long hypoxic workout. So how does this compare to what you've learned works for you in prior efforts? If there are comparable prior efforts to this, I don't know if there are, but
I think when I did the 6 hour workout a few weeks ago, I was pretty close to that as well, like 400. Basically, on paper, it doesn't look like much. It's, I went from eating something every 20 minutes to eating something every 15 minutes. Like that's the whole change. That's all I did. Is literally I just changed the little timer on my watch that buzzes every 20 minutes and I set it for 15 minutes. And I'm trying to eat 100 calories, which is basically one energy gel or like 2.5 Oreos or, whatever, pick your thing. But it's not a ton, but you're taking something every 15 minutes now as opposed to every 20 minutes. I think the 6 hour one went really well. Obviously, we've talked about the shorter workouts. I think that's less of a proof of concept. But once you start getting over 6 hours, seeing this work really well over 7 hours, and not just that it was, I didn't have any huge stomach problems or GI problems, but it was really completely fine. I felt like I could have eaten more, if I really needed to. Like I never got sick of any of the foods I was eating, and that's a really, really good sign. If I can, and also this is, super hypoxic, and hypoxia definitely messes with your ability to digest. So again, it's another one where I want to take it out into the field and try it in the actual mountains, because it is
yep,
different doing it in the gym where everything is a lot more controlled. Suddenly, oh my gosh, it's -20 and I can't open anything because my fingers are too cold or something. You run into problems out in the real world in the mountains that you don't necessarily run into in the gym. But for sure, the proof of concept is there that, yeah, I can take in quite a bit more carbohydrate than I thought I could. 30% more. That's really significant, and I'm excited to go test that out in the field.
yeah, that's great. Because again, I think that's one of the things that I perceive as a layperson over your career that's always been a challenge in whether it's
For
been
sure.
super long running races and or mountain climbing things. Okay, so we'll hope that helps. You
Yep.
mentioned at one point practicing not drinking too much. Always, again, it was in this long workout.
Yeah.
Only 2.5 liters over 7 hours of very intense work. So what's the
Mhm.
point of that? Is that specifically to do with Everest or general
Yeah.
practicing or?
It's almost like the opposite of the fuel stuff. It's like I'm trying to see how little water I can get away with, especially combined with the intense fueling, because sometimes like your body needs liquid to metabolize certain things. So uh, yeah, water is kind of one of the crux things on a really long FKT like Everest. There's some stretches where you're going, for example, the last piece basically, so from Camp 4 to the summit of the mountain and back, that could take you 12 hours, like just that piece to go a round trip, which means you have to carry everything. There's no support above there, right? So you're at Camp 4, you can drink a bunch there, but then any water that you're going to drink for the next 12 hours, you have to carry. And this is the highest part of the mountain, so every gram is going to be a lot. Every ounce matters that you're carrying up there. And it's it's kind of like the rocket fuel paradox. Like, you you in theory could carry more and maybe you'll move a little bit quicker if you feel better, but I don't know, there's only so much water is really heavy. One
Yep.
Nalgene, 1 liter of water is a kilogram. That's 2.5 pounds, 2.2 pounds. That's a lot. So this has been, yeah, I would say it has been a little bit of like experiment in suffering, is just, okay, how dehydrated can I get and still move well and still process calories well. And this was definitely, I was so thirsty when I finished this one, which is not like the best sign, because again, this is only 7 hours. We're talking about only, quote unquote. And, some of these stretches between camps could be, especially that last one from the Camp 4 to the summit and back, that could be significantly more than that. The only kind of like positive datum I have here is I look back to when I did the record on Manaslu, a little, when was that? Gosh, a year ago. Um,
Yeah, I
that
remember you had hardly any water.
I think I only had like 1 liter for like 12 hours or something. Like it was totally outrageous. And so, there are kind of anecdotal um experiences in my own life that show me, okay, like yeah, I can be a little bit of a camel, and you can really kind of overhydrate at the camps where I'll have some stuff stashed, or where maybe there will be people who could boil water, but at the end of the day, it's really just okay, how little water can you tolerate and how many calories can you tolerate. That's it's like kind of the two ends
Right.
of the spectrum.
But you also have to be careful because you had problems with hallucinations on your last summit. So you really have to be
Yeah.
careful to make sure, does it does it matter whether you drink electrolyte laden water? Does that help? Any doing anything like that to try and uh,
Um,
get chemicals in your system that will help process your
yeah, so
help your metabolism process?
well, my understanding is that you can you can kind of waterlog yourself by before you leave, or in those intermediary camps, drinking really salty stuff, because that salt will force your body to hold more water than it would otherwise. So salt intake and how much water your body wants are proportional, right? Because your body wants a continuous homeostasis of the amount or percentage of salt in the blood, right? So if you eat a ton of salt, your body wants you to compensate for that by hydrating a lot, and then it's going to hold all that until you eventually pee it out. So if you can do that beforehand, I think that's one way to kind of overcompensate a little bit, like a camel, like I was saying, where you can actually. This is another thing I was talking to Ryan Hall about, because he was even talking about creatine as something that is another uh, um, I don't know what it is, chemical substance, that
Creatine, yeah,
especially if that,
yep,
yeah,
it
that
drives
basically create.
muscle protein synthesis,
Right, and one of the side effects of creatine is that it also, like sodium, will
holds
have your
water.
or it holds, yeah, your body will hold more water. Sorry, I'm having a
Yep.
rough afternoon, but you know what I'm saying. So you can essentially waterlog yourself, and you actually, he was describing this, he'd done it before on something. He was like, yeah, the first like 2 hours I felt like I weighed like 1,000 pounds, because I probably had like 5 extra pounds of water, literally just water weight. And if you can do that, great. It's probably worth the sacrifice of feeling like garbage for the first 2 hours to have, essentially an extra 2 or 3 liters of liquid in your body that you can use and metabolize and sweat out, and, exhale out all these things that we do with water, so that you're at least starting at a higher level. So there's definitely more experimentation there, but yeah, it is funny because it's like we're pushing the calories on one end, and we're pushing the fluid like in the opposite direction on the other
Yeah.
side.
Yeah. Well, and the other point I was making was not even so much holding water, but electrolytes in general, not just salt, but magnesium. It's not magnesium, but the other electrolytes,
Potassium,
potassium,
yeah.
um, they have enormous impact on your synapses, your neurons in particular.
Hmm.
That's why potassium with muscles, salt to a
Yep.
certain extent with your brain. So it just occurred to me that that might be important to consider. I don't know if there's any research. I don't know if there's any truth to it or if you can even tell, but something to think
Yep.
about for sure.
I mean, I basically never drink actual water, just straight water, especially when I'm exercising. So yeah, to what you're saying, if I can if I'm drinking water, it better have something in it that's also going to be valuable besides just the water. So whether that's,
Mhm.
some really salty electrolyte drink mix, or whether it also has calories in it. But
Yeah.
if you're carrying
Yeah.
those, 2.5 pounds per liter, you might as well have something in it. So you're not just getting the hydration, but you're actually also getting something, in the form of
Right.
electrolytes or calories or
And
something
you've
like
also
that. Yeah,
got
for
to
sure.
consider that balance when you're at that height.
Yep.
If you can't think straight, you're not going to get to the top.
Exactly. Yep.
So, yeah. Okay. All right. I'm out of questions. Anything else you want to add? What's coming up in the next week?
Yeah, this Upcoming week will probably be the last week of this big block. It's been going really well, and we're gonna wrap it up with a big day on Cotopaxi, probably next this coming weekend, like a week from now. So that's really exciting. It's a beautiful mountain. The weather here in the mountains has been amazing the last week, so it's a really good window. The conditions seem really good. So probably going to go there and do something similar to what I did with Ryan back in March, which is basically just spend all night going up and down the mountain, like just laps. And it's funny because last time we barely even made it onto the glacier. I think we had to flip at like 5,300 meters because the conditions were really bad. So we were kind of starting lower down and then just touching the glacier a little bit. This time, I think the conditions are going to be good, and so we should be able to basically stage the whole thing so it's all on the snow, which is really nice because that's, here in Quito we don't get any snow even on our big mountains. So it'll be nice to actually, put the crampons on, get the ice axe out, and practice moving on snow in the dark for a long time and eating a lot and not drinking much.
Okay. As your parent, be safe. Are you going to do this with other people?
Yeah, this a guy Flavio, he's a UIAGM guide here in Ecuador. So he's been the guy that we've been working with for the last couple of years. He's a really good dude. And then
Great.
also I think my friend Joy is going to come. She won't do the workout with me, but she'll be on the mountain doing her own thing. So yeah, it should be fun. Awesome. All
All
right, well,
right.
let's wrap there and we'll come back for our cool down.
Okay. Okay, so for our cool down, we're going to talk about a fundraiser that Tyler, you've organized through the Chosky Foundation in association with your upcoming summit record attempt on Mount Everest. So to get started, tell us why you're fundraising for charity with this Everest expedition and where will people's donations go?
So yeah, this is something I've been excited about. This expedition obviously wasn't even supposed to happen. Ideally, we were trying to be done in the spring, but coming back in the fall, it felt like this was an opportunity for me to do something more than just go do another cool FKT and be a part of a movie, which is kind of what we were doing in the spring. It felt a little bit less in my control. This one was very much me and my people. We were the ones in charge of everything and organizing everything. So had a little bit more say in what we did. And, you guys, I think, Mr. C and my mother, I think you guys raised me very well in the sense that I remember even from when I was 6 or 7 years old and got really, really sick and, was at Mass General Hospital for a while. And, the first thing that we did basically when I was healthy enough to go back to school the next year was we started this, stuffed animal drive for
The Beanie
uh,
Baby
the
Project.
Beanie the
Yes.
Beanie Baby project. Yeah, it was like a startup. But yeah, I think that really had a big impact on me was, I had this experience that was negative and traumatic and there was this idea of, okay, like you made it through that. Now, what can you do to help people who are in a similar situation to what you went through to make it less terrible? And, that is something that kind of struck a nerve with me. And, we could talk about Strive and the work that I did down in Peru. I think that'll come up in a bit. But, I think having this idea of giving back and, I've been very, very, very grateful and fortunate over the course of my entire life and especially my athletic career to just have gotten so much kindness and support from other people and now to be in a place where I can hopefully pay some of that back just to the world in the form of help and good karma. That's really what this was about. So I think it's one thing to go and do a cool athletic project, and it's another, I think it's more meaningful when you're actually doing it for something that's not just yourself. Because at the end of the day, sports is a game and it's very selfish. And when you can make it about something that's bigger than you, I think that can actually be really motivating. And also, it's just a net positive for the world. Yeah. So that's kind of where the idea game came from. And then in terms of exactly where people's donations will go, I'm trying to use this particular fundraiser to raise funds for youth athletic programs specifically in Nepal and Ecuador. So we can talk a little bit more about exactly what the details of that look like and kind of why we chose those places. Obviously, Nepal is where Mount Everest is, so that seemed like an obvious one, and Ecuador is where I am now. But yeah, that's the idea. We're trying to help out some young kids to get empowered and motivated through sports, and that's what we're trying to raise money for.
Okay. And so we'll talk in more detail in a little bit about where the donations will go. So you came up with this concept of 25 Everest, which is fascinating. You'll climb over 216,000 meters. in training, which is just mind-boggling to me. It's what, maybe 8,000 meters around the world or something like that? Miles. Oh, it's
No,
miles. Never mind.
it's
Which is
30
25,
30
anyway, 200,
25,000 meters around the world.
yeah,
No,
216,000
sorry, sorry, sorry.
meters,
25,000 kilometers. 25,000
kilometers,
kilometers
right?
around
Yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
world.
Never
Yeah.
mind. Never mind.
It's okay.
Which is, but anyway, 216,000 meters is still a long ways. It's 25 times the height of Mount Everest. How did you come up with this idea, this framework for the fundraiser, and what does that volume of climbing actually look like in your day-to-day training?
I always like this idea of kind of gamifying things like this. I think it's always awkward to ask people for money, and I've always enjoyed when it's related to something that the person is actually doing. I remember back in like right after I graduated from college when I was raising money for this after school program that we were trying to fund in Peru. I did this challenge where it's like, okay, how many 5 minute miles in a row can I run on the treadmill or something? And people would pledge like $1 per mile or something like that. And so I think that kind of gamification is fun. And like originally I was like, oh, I'm gonna do it by like the total number of training I did. People pledge like $1 per this amount. And at the end of the day, it got like really complicated. I was like, you know what? Okay, I'm just gonna like make this way more simple. I'm just gonna estimate how much vert I'm gonna do over the summer, and then we'll round that up to the number of Everests, and then people can give. Okay, if it's $1 per Everest of training, that's $25. That's pretty simple. And if it's $1,000, that's whatever that is, $80 or something, or 80 Everest, $80 per Everest. So I thought it was just kind of a cute, fun way to kind of gamify it a little bit and make it a little bit more engaging. So it's tied not only to the actual thing that we're going to try and do on Mount Everest, but also, at the end of the day, that's the tip of the iceberg, and 99% of the iceberg is the training that you do, which you asked about. That's for me. If you just listen to the whole episode, I think this was 17,500 meters of training this week, which comes out to 2,500 meters a day. I don't know, something like that. My normal route up and down Ruku, which is my kind of standard like easy day, is I think 1,800 meters. So that's about 6,000 feet, something like that. So that's a normal recovery day at this point. It's a lot of climbing. That's what you have to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. So you told me earlier that you had two anonymous lead donors, and that due to that, all of the overhead was going to be covered, and every dollar that people donate would go directly to projects rather than paying for the administration costs of running the foundation and such. So how important was it to you to get that so you could structure it this way? And what does that mean for donors?
I've seen fundraisers, especially with people like climbing Everest. That's like a big thing is people go to Everest and they do fundraisers. And I wanted to be really upfront about this because I always personally question, okay, if I give you $100, how much of that $100 is just paying for you to climb Everest? Because climbing Everest, as we've talked about, is really, really freaking expensive. And I didn't want people to think, oh, I'm just paying for Tyler to go climb Everest. That's why it was important to have that part done first, have those commitments and say, okay, now that part's taken care of. Every other dollar we raise, we can put towards actual projects. Climbing Everest is probably the most expensive sport thing that you can do in the whole world. And there was this project with another company in the spring, and there were like 5 guys or something, and they were all climbing Everest with a very expensive outfitter. And in total, I think they raised like $100,000 between 5 people. So let's call it $20,000 a person. I don't know exactly how much their expedition cost, but I guarantee you it was significantly more than $20,000. It's probably closer to $100,000. So now you're saying, okay, I like, is that money that you guys raised, is it going to you or is it going to the charity? There's a lot of gray area stuff here. And I wanted to be super clear and upfront with that from the very beginning that, hey, that stuff's taken care of. This is all going towards the charitable side, and to make sure that we kept that really, really separate for everyone. That was super important for me.
Okay, good to know. So every dollar goes directly to the programs you're supporting, not to anything else. So this
Exactly.
fundraiser you mentioned is supporting young athletes in Nepal and Ecuador. Why those two countries? And is that due to your personal connections? How does that shape your foundation's approach?
Yeah, going back let me contextualize my answer here a little bit. So I led trips in Peru for about 10 years in the summertime. And these were student trips for mostly, I'd say Americans. We got some Europeans too, but it was mostly American kids, high school and college kids that came to Peru. And a big component of that was service work. And we really kind of pivoted from service work to service learning, which was really the idea of teaching kids about service and helping other people and how you can do that in an effective way, as opposed to just this idea of, quote unquote, volunteerism, where you just throw kids into a classroom or some situation where they're really not prepared and maybe they're actually doing more harm than good, whatever. I've done like so many long talks and podcasts. I could do a whole one about this, but that's not necessarily here or there. The point is, I found that our program in Peru, I was leading the Peru program. It was a small town. We went back to the same place every single summer. The reason that I would say we were even slightly effective was because I developed personal relationships with people in the town. And they got to know us, they got to know our program, they got to know me personally. And that was really a critical step in actually creating projects that were helpful to that community. So going back to your original question about Nepal and Ecuador, I think one of the things that people sometimes get wrong about service is they see, let's take a disaster, an earthquake or a flood or something like that, in a place that's far away where they've never been, and it looks terrible, and they have no skills, and they just go there, or they give money and they think that they can help. But really, you need people who are embedded in the community, who are connected to those people. So Nepal and Ecuador are two places now where I've spent basically almost all of my time over the last 5 years. Ecuador even more over the past almost 20 years, and I've gotten to know these communities, and I have connections on the ground with local people, who are going to help us manage some of these projects. And to me, that is the most important part of service, because if you come in, especially as, for me, as like a white foreign man, and I come into this place and I say, hey, here's what you guys need, here's what I think will be helpful as, this American white dude, sometimes that is A, not received well, and B, is actually counterproductive to what you're trying to do. So Nepal and Ecuador for me are two places that I love, that I've spent a ton of time, where I know a lot of people. And my goal is to help people accomplish the things that they want to do, is not to come in with our own agenda and say, hey, here's how you're going to run this stuff, or here's what we're going to do. The ideas that we've had have really come from the communities. And I think that's the most important thing, is that the actual ideas for the project are coming locally, and then also the implementation is mostly done by local people. So that's kind of the long answer to your why Nepal and Ecuador question.
Okay, makes a lot of sense. The idea of having local connections and really being able to leverage that to make a difference in the community, to understand the community first and foremost,
Mm.
and how you could really help, and then to take advantage of those relationships to get things done, I think is crucially important. All right.
Yep.
So let's talk about what these programs actually look like. So again, where people's money is going to go. So if you read the description, it says coaching, athletic gear, mentorship, travel to competitions. What does that mean in practice for the athletes who will benefit in rural Nepal or Ecuador?
I think there's a lot of things that we take for granted, coming from the United States, especially the idea that, you could spend 20 or 50 or $100 even to enter a running race, which in a place like Nepal, especially, where the average annual income is about $1,100. Do the math. That's an average month's income for a family. So that's a tremendous amount of money. So I think that, we talk about the last mile problem a lot in service, which is, people, they have a great project, they have the kind of 90% of the support done, and then there's some little thing at the end that they don't think of, because they're not part of that community, they don't understand it. The example that I always give is, I remember this would have been like 2011 or something, like almost 15 years ago. This is in Peru, in the little town I was talking about. We went into this school, and they had it was called the One Laptop Project. Mr. C, I know you are familiar with that. I think it was
Oh,
from
yeah.
MIT. They had a bunch of these one laptops, and the idea was, MIT, I'm pretty sure it was out of MIT. They developed this really robust,
It was
really
Nicholas
simple,
Negroponte. Yeah.
yeah, they developed this really simple, robust little laptop, and they wanted to make it cheap and durable, and then they would send it to schools so that kids could learn, basically how to use computers. And what happened in this particular case, they were all just like sitting in a corner, and I was like, "Why are you guys using those? That's super cool." And the teachers told me, "No, because we don't have enough electricity. Like we literally don't have enough power to run the units." And that's a classic last mile problem. So, anyways, going back to the question about the coaching, the athletic gear, the mentorship, the travel to competitions, what we really wanted to do there was, and again, this is a little bit hand wavy, but we wanted to make sure that we were covering everything, everything from making sure that people literally have shoes to run in. That's not a given everywhere in the world. That people have shoes, that people have clothes that they can exercise in, that aren't, the clothes that they also say go to church in or something, because that can be a cultural problem. And then even the idea of traveling to competitions, that idea of, okay, I'm gonna spend, some money on a race entry. I'm gonna spend some money on the bus. Maybe I even have to go to a hotel or something like that. But things that if you if you don't have that piece, you have that 90% problem where, okay, it could still be a great thing, but I think competition is important, and I think it's great, and I think it's valuable. And if they want to be able to do that, you have to have that in there, because what we think of as a minor expense of, oh, this person's going to take the bus and then, they're going to spend $20 on the race entry in Ecuador or something, that's a lot of money to someone down here. So that was really the idea is, obviously for me, I think with sport, the just doing the thing and doing it with other people, and then having people help you with it, whether it's a coach or a mentor or someone like that, that part is so, so important. But really, if you don't have all of it together and you don't really think through every single step, and make sure that you're, checking every single box, and so that's the way that a lot of these projects fail.
Got it. So, ironic probably isn't the right word, but it's too bad you didn't call me up when you were doing that one laptop stuff, because they're built with cranks for exactly that reason. You can actually crank them.
Really?
And, yep,
Oh,
because they
wow.
knew they'd be sending it to a
Huh.
lot of places without power. Um,
Interesting.
so they had a little hand
See, that's
crank
such
that
a
would give
that's a
you,
great that's such a good idea. Gosh.
yeah.
Huh.
Now, they were pretty thoughtful, that group, about how to get those out and how to make them worthwhile. But
Huh.
it's not surprising that somehow it got lost in translation and nobody ever
Yeah.
figured out. That was the one thing that they didn't have enough money for, because it's tough. They were deploying them all over the world, was to get enough on the ground, the last mile problem, whatever you want to call it, people in the schools who could say, oh no, here's how it
That's what I was
works.
gonna
These
say.
things.
I think that, to me, if I were doing something like that, you need someone to go to the school for like a couple weeks and show everybody how to
Right.
use. And I don't know if they were doing that.
Right.
Maybe I assume they couldn't do it everywhere. But
Yep.
in this situation, and not to speak poorly, but it's, this is a community that is pretty rural and does not have a lot of access to technology. And so, yeah, maybe they had these cranks and they could have done it, but I think to send these things down there and expect the teachers to figure it out and be able to show them without someone showing the teachers, again, it's like
Yep.
this is 2011. There's no like, they can't go on YouTube and look at a tutorial even,
Right.
because there's no
Right.
electricity and there's no internet.
Right.
So yeah, but anyways, I digress.
Yep. Okay. All right. So great project, and I'm very proud of
Thank
you
you.
for putting this together. I think it'll do a lot of great things for these young athletes. For listeners who want to support this beyond just the tax deductible donation, because it is a true 501c3, as it's called in the United States, true charity,
Yep.
what can they expect in terms of following along both your training and seeing the impact of their contributions in these communities?
So when you go ahead and donate, we'll get some amount of contact info from you, whether that's a email or phone number. And we will definitely send you updates. You can also go to tylercandrews.com/Everest. That's going to be our go-to homepage for everything related to Everest. So we'll have updates there, both during the build-up, so as we get ready to go, and then afterwards, once we've started putting these projects into place. So you will be getting updates via email or text or whatever you'd like. You can also unsubscribe from those if you don't want to get a bunch of emails and texts. And you can just go check out our website if you want to kind of follow along. But yeah, we'll definitely have lots of updates both over the next couple of months, and then over the coming months and hopefully years that these projects continue to go on in these communities.
And most importantly, how do people donate?
That is a great question. You can do it Like I said, same website. You only have to remember one thing. It's tylercandrews.com/Everest. And then right at the top, there's a big button that says donate. You can click that. You can also go to do it through Chosky. So it's chosky.run. And then there's a donate button right in the top right-hand corner. And that'll take you to, it's a third-party site. It's called Give Butter. And it's specifically made for nonprofits. So they don't charge us any fees or anything like that, which is fantastic. And you know that all your dollars are going to the right place.
Great. Anything else that you want to add?
No, that's it. Super grateful, guys. We'll have the link in the show notes directly to give. So if you're so inclined, anything helps. Really, it does. Luckily, we have the scale is on our side. We have, I don't know, what is it, maybe 5,000-ish people who are listening to this podcast every week. And, if everybody gives a couple bucks, like that stuff adds up quickly. And you guys know the drill. So yeah, maybe hold out on Starbucks for 1 week and, give us whatever, 25 bucks that you would have spent on like 3 lattes. And that'll go a long way. So I'm super, super grateful for all you guys for listening, and any donations that come through. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. As always, please send us any feedback, questions, comments, concerns, hopes, dreams. You can send those to my email, ty@chosky.run, or DM me on Instagram at Tyler C. Andrews. Remember, you can also read my training logs. It's all multimedia at tylercandrews.com or via Substack at Tyler C. Andrews. Ty's Training is a Chosky Media production and brought to you by the good folks at Chosky, the world's leader in online coaching, traveling community for endurance athletes. Thanks, everybody, and we'll talk to you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.